behind the story on our event-driven enterprise solution for the Rabobank. My name is Vincent Oostindje. I'm a business architect at Rabobank, mostly responsible actually for our online channels like our app and our websites. But actually streaming is getting more and more important also in that area. So you will see that later.
My name is Jeroen. I'm Managing Director of Axual, and we're a company that specializes in fast data and data streaming solutions.
So, probably everybody in this room knows Rabobank, so I don't need to explain a lot about that. Probably also everybody in the room knows the mission statement, which is growing a better world together. If you watch commercials at home, you probably have seen this. What you might not know is the pillars below that the way we try to achieve that mission. So we have two big strategies. One is banking for Netherlands and the other is banking for food. Banking for the Netherlands is mostly my area with the websites and the app on the digital part. Two important pillars there are excellent customer focus, which is all about getting more digital and being 100% convenient and more real time, which we'll talk about. And the other aspect is having empowered employees, which is a very broad topic, and it actually applies to all our employees, but especially also in the IT department to our DevOps teams, for example, where we put more and more autonomy in the teams. So we want to be, with our mission statement, we want to increase our relevance more to our customers. We want to be 100% digital. We want to be completely real time where we can. You know, banks, they're typically batch oriented. We want to be much more real time. And we want to support our customers in their financial health and growth. These goals have been there for a long time. What we've seen is that with the IT stack that we had, our technology stack, we weren't able to achieve all of this. We had a few missing items, and we had a vision on that. What we needed, we said, is a solution where we can, where things that happen within the organization, anywhere within the organization, can be consumed elsewhere in the organization, so that we can build functionality and real-time solutions on top of that. And the parts of the organization sending and consuming those events shouldn't be aware of each other, because otherwise we would all couple everything together, so we wanted to decouple that. But there is one big constraint, which is already on the slide, which is that we're a bank. And being a bank means there's rules, there's regulations, there's laws that we need to follow. We're big, we're like this big steamboat that slowly moves. So that results in a lot of requirements that we had to fill in. 4 of those are here. Security is a big topic, of course, at a bank. If you have like a streaming platform, you don't want anybody to just consume transactions from any customer. It has to be very well regulated. We want to be in control of what's happening in the platform, all the events that are going through. And of course, we need to be highly available 24/7. And the last part, as I already mentioned, we are moving into DevOps more, so we want autonomous teams, so we want to have self-service, we want the teams to be able to do everything themselves more. Those are 4 of the requirements. There are more. So what we envisioned was a streaming platform, where we could say we have a platform like a marketplace where events come in and events can get consumed by everybody who is interested in that. So in the middle here you have the bus, the business event bus, and around it there are all kinds of domains that see that there are events that are interesting for them, so they can classify them as events, business events, and can bring them to the marketplace. Well, you can have a long study on what actually is a business event. That can be you could probably get a degree on that. The thing we said was very simple. If it's of importance for an organization, for a part of the organization, then probably it's a business event, and please publish it. And then we can always see later who will consume it. So it's more about thinking in events rather than thinking of what you want to consume. Just produce whatever are events important for you. 3 different parts in there. So we have producers creating events, we have consumers subscribing to events and processing them, and we have apps that work between them, so that read streams and produce new events from that. So some examples on that. You can imagine a customer birthday, like a birth date is typically an attribute in our CRM system, but actually when somebody is having a birthday, it's actually an event that happens, and we might want to do something with it, especially in the case when somebody becomes 18. We have to do additional due diligence for our customers, so we can trigger that kind of process from that. Another big one is, of course, when transactions happen, when there are bookings on a payment account. Maybe you have configured yourself that you want to have alerts on that if your balance on your account drops or goes up. but we also have fraud detection. So we also need to look into the transaction and monitor them and have logic on that. And the last example is customers logging in. The fact that somebody's logging in can trigger our relevance engine, and from that we can serve the best action for you at that moment. Jeroen will go into the project that we started to create this platform. What we did at that time is we invested some research. We looked into the platforms available, and actually we found that there was not a platform available to us that filled in all the requirements, especially on the security and high availability part. So Jeroen will talk.
Okay, I'll see if I can use the space, maybe that prevents the from sleeping. So we started a project in 2015 to select software that could fit the requirements of Rabobank, and at the same time could deliver this streaming functionality to the bank. So we looked at different options. Of course, within a bank there's lots and lots of technology already available. There was also new upcoming technology in the market, especially around open source software. So we compared open source and proprietary options. Nowadays you would probably also look at the SaaS streaming services that you can buy from the big cloud vendors. Back then that wasn't really an option. But over time our choice for Kafka has been pretty steady and confirmed. Nowadays you see all kinds of movements in that market. You see Pulsar as a new upcoming technology also moving into the SaaS space. You see a lot of proprietary solutions being built around Kafka and offered around Kafka, and of course Kafka as a service is also offered in many different places, and all the proprietary vendors are also doing SaaS nowadays. But you also see some counter movements like Microsoft Event Hub supporting Kafka APIs nowadays. But in the end, so Rabobank chose to go for Apache Kafka as the basis of the business event bus, mainly for its performance, scalability, the fact that it has a lot of mechanisms built in already that you want in a big enterprise. But we did find out that there's like a steep learning curve, and that's a big Lego box that you buy basically, but that's nothing that comes really pre-built out of the box. So there's a lot of stuff that you have to do yourself. And that's what we also found out when we started to talk about the system and Kafka as the basis of the system with people in the enterprise. Because if you have this streaming engine, you can make your data scalable, but then all the enterprise questions start to arise. So if you look at these different characters, these are all persona that you find in a big enterprise. So you quickly talk to data owners, and data owners will start asking questions about, how is data governance arranged? Who owns what data? How do I keep control over my data? How are applications governed? Which applications is owned by whom? And how can I give access to that application to my data or revoke it? What about data lineage? What about GDPR? You see IT architects, they ask all kinds of different questions again. What about hybrid cloud architectures? What about data replication, high availability, disaster recovery, all these things. For developers, there's like a whole different perspective again. They want to quickly hook up to a platform, start producing messages or start consuming messages. And how can you make their life easy? They often run CI/CD build pipelines at night. How can you integrate with those pipelines and make sure that they run their tests against a well-running platform? You have operators that care about metrics. They want to control the platform, keep it performant, keep it stable, keep it available. So they're looking for like dashboards where you can get all these metrics from. And then of course you have the more formal side, the procurement people. They're looking for credible vendors, flexible contracts, proven solutions, and especially in the case of banks, you have to be fully auditable. So from top to bottom, you have to allow the ECB and the Dutch Central Bank to perform audits and to certify the system as being okay. So this is all stuff that we found that the technology from Kafka doesn't really bring you. So we said, well, if we're going to build this business event bus, we have to. De power komt die terug. If you want to build this business event bus, there's a lot of stuff that we have to do around that. But ultimately, we're going to build this nice system. But ultimately, this big system is just a pass-through for data. So we need to make sure that the business applications around the platform, they actually bring the business value, and they have to be enabled to bring as much business value as quickly as possible. So that's why we said, well, the business event bus is supposed to make streaming simple, really, really simple. A connecting application should be able to grow and be able to connect to the platform in a mere matter of hours, to register its topics, register its schema, to give applications access, and to be able to set up secure connections and produce and consume information. So that's what we did, and that's what sort of like became our mission, to deliver a platform that is robust, stable, performant, at the same time deliver tools to all the parties that are in our vicinity and want to connect, and also to give them support where human support is required and necessary. So we started to define a number of guiding principles for setting up this platform, the architectural principles. So we wanted to have a platform that is highly available, is fully secured, where data governance is built in, and which also provides self-service to allow to scale the organization around the bus. And then over time, in 2015, Rabobank didn't have a full cloud policy yet, but over time there's a public cloud strategy now being formulated. So over time we also made sure that everything that we did was also cloud enabled. So a little bit about the technology. We started, as I said, in 2015, and one of the first questions that we got is, well, how can you scale Kafka across data centers? Because everywhere where you read, it's advised to not do Kafka across 2 data centers. Nowadays it's different. You can have 3 availability zones. 3 is like the minimum that Kafka literature says that you need. But with 2, it's kind of difficult. So that's why we started to set up different Kafka environments in different data centers with message and offset replication in the middle. And the idea was that if you have an application that connects to one of these clusters in one data center, you can produce, consume messages there. But all data and offsets are synchronized to the other data center, so any consumer could also pick it up there. And could also see the exact same data and vice versa. So that worked, but then we also wanted to have disaster recovery set up fully. So we said, well, let's create something that we call the Discovery API. And the Discovery API is just a simple REST service that gives you all the Kafka coordinates, where your Bootstrap servers are, your schema registries, etc., all the information that an application needs. And it fetches that every 10 minutes. And that allows us also to create 24/7 applications, microservices, to fetch in the Kafka coordinates. You connect to a cluster, and then in 10 minutes, if you get different coordinates back, you just break off all connections on that cluster and dynamically switch over to another cluster to allow for planned maintenance windows and potential. Of course, within a bank, everything has to be fully secured. So this is where we leveraged a lot of mechanisms that you already find in Kafka, but we made them easily manageable. So all connections between the applications that want to do something with events are fully secured. It's all two-way SSL, so you have to be mutually trusted. And all data streams have a full access control. So you can either write to a particular data stream, or you can consume from a particular data stream, or both, but you have to get those rights explicitly. And to give you an idea, at the moment there are like all payment transactions on all bank accounts, information, there's product authorizations on the platform, there's even performance management that we get from the Rabobank mobile banking app, and all those messages are individual messages being placed on the platform, all next to each other and fully secured, so that nobody is so that nobody, no application can connect to a topic that it isn't supposed to. We did a lot of work around data governance as well. because within organizations everybody wants to keep track of where data is and whose data it is. So we set up catalogs of topics, catalogs of data formats, catalogs of applications and how they're registered. And using those catalogs, this is like the early pictures that we could generate. From those catalogs, we could generate the sort of like flow of information through the organization across the platform. So here in the middle, it's not supposed to be legible, but here in the middle you see the data streams and the data types are conveyed on those data streams. And the white boxes are the producers that send information to those streams, and the white ones on the right are the consuming applications. So you see that in a landscape like this, it's really almost a visual flow of information on how that goes across the platform. At the same time, we strictly enforced the use of structured information on the bus, so nobody would be able to, send off information that would frustrate others or could maybe be interpreted in another way. Well, it took us, I think, 1.5 years to figure out a mechanism in which we could describe those catalogs in a formal way. We had a number of iterations to improve, and finally we found a model that we dared to not only have in like configuration files, but to also put in a database. And for those of you that develop applications, databases are a little bit more difficult to change a structure from. So that's why, after these text files we could easily modify, but now in a database it becomes a little harder. But the model had proven itself, so that's what we set out to do next. So now there's a fully managed database which contains all the metadata, so all the stream definitions, all the environments that they're deployed in, all the owners of information, and that database is wrapped in a REST API that's fully queryable. So CI/CD integration could take place at that level. You could, at night in your test runs, you could easily set up a new data stream, register a schema, deploy it somewhere, run your tests, and then when your pipeline is done, you can easily throw away again those data streams. But yet on top, this is probably the most of the platform that allows it to scale. The idea is that DevOps teams in your organization, they can each log in to the platform, to the self-service interface, and they each manage their own piece of the configuration of the entire platform. So I can log in as a solution architect. That means that I can get the role for application owner. I configure my application, I indicate what SSL certificates it used to connect to the platform. And the next step would be I can browse through the data catalog. And in the data catalog, I could, for instance, maybe find the list of transactions or the stream of transactions and request access to that stream. And then the data owner of that stream will automatically get a request notification, and he can, review my request, and if approved, he can click approve, and then everything on Kafka is automatically set up, and the application from that moment on can access the topic. So that's a bit of what you see here. So we have the whole topology of what goes on the platform. You have configuration screens, and there's an access request screen and the approval. It's all a bit difficult to go in depth about right now. But if you want, tomorrow there's a full product demo from 10:30 to 11:30 in the tech demo hall next door. And two colleagues will fully demo how this works in a big organization and in general. Well, the last one was cloud. Rabobank has a public cloud strategy nowadays, so they want to go SaaS before PaaS, before IaaS. So that means that they were looking for solutions that could offer them not only Kafka as a service, but this whole managed platform as a service. And to enable that, we sort of stretched the synchronization that we already invented between data centers. We stretched that to the cloud. So now there's like infinite number of Kafka clusters that we can automatically synchronize. So that's what we also set up. So this is the architecture that we started out with. it was like 2 data centers which each had their own Kafka cluster, single tenant, and you had like half of the applications connecting to one data center and half of the applications connecting to another data center, distribution in the middle. And then over time the Rabobank Azure environment was set up. And this environment has like Pivotal Cloud Foundry installations and other types of applications that also want to do something with data streaming. So that's where we set up a separate cloud environment, similar to what we already had on premise. And of course, applications can easily connect to those two clusters, and it has the same kind of setup as the on-premise clusters. But then, since the middle of this year, there's also now a fully trust channel in between. Everything that is being streamed from the backend of Rabobank is now automatically synchronized to the clusters that are running in cloud. And you could produce from cloud and consume on-prem, or you can produce on-prem and consume in cloud. That's all being made transparent. So applications see the exact same data. So this whole idea of a bus is now fully stretched across on-prem and cloud. And the nice thing about this is that it also facilitates the movement to cloud, because that movement is not going to happen overnight. Rabobank has a public cloud strategy, but that will be executed for, well, but maybe the next 4 or 5 years. So that means that we now also facilitate the fact that you can pick up an application, transition it to cloud, and make it connect to the platform and see the exact same data as it already did on-prem.
Yeah, so that was all a lot of technology, of course, which he knows all about. What this picture tends to show is that the way we've set it up, and especially the DevOps part and the being in control, means that we have the functional maintenance completely within the DevOps teams themselves, which are tens and maybe hundreds of teams. There's only one team doing actually the technical maintenance on the cluster itself, and then there's of course our own cloud infra department. So what you see is that it's like a funnel. We can scale out to many teams, and independent of the amount of topics, independent of the amount of data, independent of the amount of events and applications connected to it, the teams in the middle stay the same, and that allows you to scale it out. In January, somewhere around last year, the self-service went live for Rabobank, and what we've seen is that since then the number of topics in production has doubled. So in just less than a year time, the number of topics being created goes up. We've seen that the number of topics in the dev test environment is actually tripled, which shows that there's been a lot of experimenting going on by teams now with events, and well, it's like something that will also happen to production in a while, of course. And we've seen that in the number of applications registered to use streaming is actually quadrupled, so that's 4 times the amount of applications as before we introduced self-service. So this is really something that enables teams to use streaming themselves and not depend on some other department to do that for them, while we're still in control, because we have to thank you, 5 minutes left. He's just going through my voice. So what we see now is that roughly 650 million messages a day go through it, that translate to about 20 or 25K per second. So that's, well, I think it's quite a lot. We're not LinkedIn maybe, who does all their click feeds, but it's still quite a lot. And we have now over 70 teams using this product. So that's really a tremendous growth. What we've seen today is a number of use cases we have. I think we already mentioned a couple of them. We don't have a lot of time to go into all of them. So there's a lot of, and the core thing of this, I think, is that we see a lot of use cases pop up, and on top of that we see other use cases pop up that never would have been created if those use cases weren't there before. And at the same time we can realize them in a very decoupled way. So we're not linking all kinds of systems together to make something happen. For example, if now we have the payment request feature in our app, you can set that up that you get an alert back when the payment has been done by somebody else, and it just triggers it works on top of the other features, but it's not highly integrated. It's just producing a message, producing an event that it's been done, and then we can pick it up and do other stuff with it. I think in the future is a very important one for us. On the technical side, is we're doing lots and lots more microservices, especially also in the cloud. And we're doing a lot of synchronous microservices these days, but to make it really scale out better and really make them independent, you really expect it to do it more asynchronously. And then you also need more like a streaming platform. So that's where it also fits in. And I think that's it, given the time. Back to you.
There's also, we have a stand here with Axual. If you want to know more about the system, then please come by the booth. There's also a nice prize question that we have. So if you want to know what this question is all about, step by the booth sometime today. And that's it for us. Thank you very much.